Hello everyone, thanks so much for joining us on Warrior Chat. I'm Wayne McCullough. We really have truly a great alum that we're going to talk with today, Mr. Jack Hedrick from the class of 1955. And before we really start questioning Mr. Hedrick, I want to tell you a little bit about Mr. Hedrick. Obviously, Mr. Hedrick was a great student here at the high school, an honor roll student, but he also was a outstanding athlete. He played on the football team particularly and was given their backfield award by Coach Bob McCoy on the football team. He was an all-county track and field participant. So he's a great athlete, but he's also a class man. And here's how I know that. Because he has he has an Elizabethtown Blue Jay jacket on and his tie. And after Susquehanna High School, a long time ago, I went to Elizabethtown College. And one of the first gentlemen I met there was a guy by the name of Professor Jack Hedrick, who was a professor of chemistry at Elizabethtown. And he came running into my room and said, "I have to meet the other guy from Glen Rock here." And so right away we had an instant bond. So Jack Hedrick is all the things I said he was, and then he went on from Susquehanna High School to Elizabethtown College, and then ultimately became a professor of chemistry at Elizabethtown College, where I had the opportunity to meet him. And I can tell you this, folks, Mr. Hedrick truly is one of the most classy men that you'd ever meet. A man with great integrity, a man with a great sense of humor that once you get to know him, you have an opportunity to enjoy, and I'm sure you'll see some of that coming through today. But also a man that's well respected for a great work ethic, a person who gives back to the community. We've seen him do that at Elizabethtown College, and we'll talk about some of those things. So Mr. Hedrick?
Let's call it quits there. It won't get any better than this.
Okay. Nice to have you here on Alumni Pride.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, let's go all the way back to the 1950s, the early 1950s, when you were a student here at Susquehanna High School. Maybe tell us some of your fond memories.
You expect me to remember things from over half a century ago. Fond memories. Do we have hours? The first thing that comes to mind was Susquehanna was the first school that really consolidated in the state. When the state mandated this, we already had things in motion. Stewartstown, as I recall, was initially considered as being part of Southern York, but of course they eventually became the Rams of Kennerdale. That first year of consolidation, I actually got to go to New Freedom to school because the junior high was in New Freedom. The senior high was in Glen Rock, and then in the middle of the year, they would have needed Christmas vacation to move a lot of things. In the middle of the year, we all came out to Susquehanna for the first time. And I recall picture in the newspaper of Susquehanna High School out there in the hill. Why do we build schools on hills so the buses can't get up? There's this picture of Susquehanna on the hill, and the tagline is $1 million school. $1 million. Just a phenomenal thing.
Yeah.
And in years later, particularly when I was in college, friends of mine whose fathers, particularly maybe mothers, had been on the local school boards in Lancaster County would say, "Susquehanna, oh, I know that school. We went there to visit to see how a consolidated school should be built." The one good thing we did was not name the school. Well, in Lancaster County, the one at Quarryville in southern Lancaster County is Solanco. Fortunately, we didn't name this Soyoko,
right?
But yeah, it has a certain ring to it. I recall how many people were impressed with this school out here in the farmland.
Yeah, you know what amazes me, because I've seen those kind of articles too, is not only the price tag and the vision that you alluded to. Our folks had a vision before other
Lloyd
people did.
McCullough, particularly,
Yeah.
who ran the store in Siceland, was a forerunner, really way out in front of what could be done.
Yeah, just amazing. But also then the excitement and also the community pride to build, which was then absolutely state-of-the-art kind of facility, for the children to attend. And I often say that because I'm not so sure today, if we would go out in the public today and say, you know what, we want to absolutely build the most state-of-the-art facility for our students, I'm not so sure how our public would take that. It's a different time, obviously.
Yes, indeed. Yes. I agree with you. I agree with you. And when I was here maybe a month ago with you, and you gave me one of those fabulous free lunches in the room I still think of as an auditorium, some of the, I recognized many of the hallways. The music room, the round music room that caused quite a stir when it was built. The only round music room for hundreds of miles around. I can still recognize what was then state of the art is still functioning quite properly. Maybe another coat of paint and new floor tile.
But it does show a lot of vision.
I think so.
You experienced what was probably unique, once in a lifetime. Certainly the students of Susquehannock will never experience it, but where you truly brought students from a variety of communities together for the first time to mold into one high school. Students from Glen Rock, students from New Freedom. What was that like?
It was odd, not only for us, but for the other consolidated schools, because you were bringing together groups of people that were rivals on the athletic fields. The hated team from here and there. And it was, I don't think it was difficult, it was just kind of an unusual feeling at the outset. I don't think we had any trouble molding together.
It's kind of interesting because some of the things we've talked about when we sit down and chat is even something as simple as how do you decide your school colors?
Oh yes. Yes, we had a student vote on that. And I recall vividly that one of the options was maroon and gray. Glen Rock's colors were maroon and white. There was a blue and yellow option, that was New Freedom's color. I do recall Kelly green and white, and I don't know what other combinations, but I think the kids from Glen Rock got together as a block and voted for maroon and gray, which was the closest thing to maroon and white. And so we had maroon and gray. And now you are red and white, and had to change the alma mater, even if you didn't want to, because the end of the alma mater ended in maroon and gray.
All right, now here's your opportunity to show the kind of guy you are. Are you willing to tell us your alma mater from 1955?
Do you want me to sing it or say it?
If you can sing it, go for it. I'm ready for it.
I can say it, perhaps.
Okay.
Susquehannock alma mater, majestically to stand. She's the pride of our fair county, gem of this great land. In the halls, within the classrooms, we will want to stay close to thee, our alma mater, dear maroon and gray, dear red and white.
That's great. Yes. Well, in case people don't know, and I'm not sure we ever talked about this, but people may not realize it's not that many years ago that the colors were changed from maroon and gray to red and white. The way I understand it, probably in the late 60s, early 70s, which when you look at the whole course of the history of Susquehannock, not quite half were you maroon, maroon and gray, but the whole idea was they went to buy band uniforms, and it would have cost additional money to have maroon and gray because it's not a stock color. So at that point they decided to go to red and white, good or bad, instead of pay the extra money, but it's been red and white since.
The maroon and gray led to a confusing time when I was a senior. We had Manheim Central on our schedule. Manheim Central is now the premier football team in Lancaster County, maybe even the district at AAA. Their colors are also maroon and gray. My senior year, they had a quarterback, as I was a quarterback. His name was Hedrick, with a T and an H. And the uniforms looked alike. And when the PA announcer announced who threw the pass or made the tackle, it was very often Hedrick. You had no idea who had the ball and what was going on because of the similarities in the teams.
That's funny. Tell us a little bit about your academic experience here at Susquehannock, and here's why. Over the years, had a chance to talk to some people who, what I'll call, came out of Susquehannock in those early years. And truly, they, even though we were kind of thought of as a farming community, everyone felt that they left here well prepared.
I would agree with that and emphasize it even more. Yes, we were a farm school. I used to joke if the ball was shaped like a crate of eggs, we'd never lose a game. But the truth of the matter is that the farm kids had to work on a farm. Very few of them had the time to be involved in athletic endeavors.
Right.
I was in the first freshman class and then graduated in 1955. We had some fine teachers, particularly in the areas which were of interest and became of professional interest to me, math and science. Right. Grace Heindel was particularly good in plain geometry, although with her pronounced Pennsylvania Dutch accent, she talked about logarithms. Of course, she called them logs, and she would pronounce it lux, and I had a little problem with what lux were. Larry King taught algebra, and my senior year there were 6 or 8 of us, I think all male, going off to college. So he offered a third year of math that included algebra initially, and then at least a full semester of analytic geometry. Quite good. Paul Ricker, who for many years was principal in the Dover school district. He was principal at New Freedom when the jointure occurred. Paul was particularly good in solid and trig. Paul was actually from Elizabethtown, and I would see him on occasion and at Christmas time when I would take the kids down to see Santa Claus in the square. He was exceptionally strong in solid geometry, trigonometry. And Mel Wagner, Baldy Wagner, who also was an E-Town grad.
Yeah.
Baldy saw what was there and offered a second year of chemistry my senior year at a time when we had 2-hour blocks of class rather than one, so that a laboratory could be accomplished rather than just set up, do a little bit of this and break down. My first year and a half of college in those areas was simply review. I was just unbelievably prepared, and I was very happy for it. I did not understand at the time I was a student what it would do for me. I enjoyed those classes, but I had no idea how well it was going to prepare me. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've heard other people say that also.
Oh, it was awesome. At least 15 or 20 years ago, there was a big uproar here at Susquehannock about having specialized classes that, at a higher level, that only involved 1 or 2 or 3 people, and the taxpayers revolt, and we can't afford to do that. I was asked to write a letter. Ron Leese, I think.
I remember that. Ron Leese did do that.
I think
yes.
Ron Leese, the chemist, because of our knowledge of each other from the chemistry wars, asked me to write a letter, and I did, and said much the same thing in writing as I've said to you.
Yeah.
I don't know if it helped, but I wrote a letter.
It did help. We do have those advanced classes.
The taxpayers may not like it, but the students in the long run are better off.
No question about it. If you can imagine now, algebra is being taught at the middle school level for 7th graders. I mean, it's just amazing, isn't it?
The first algebra I encountered, was Wilton Hum, 7th or 8th grade. Yeah. And now for what I was taking, we're talking about calculus, and maybe even further.
Yeah.
But it's over half a century ago. It was, as you described the school itself, physically as being state of the art. There were some things going on down here that most people weren't aware of, and were a great advantage to the likes of Alfred Hendricks, Bill Gantz, Jack Hedrick, Dale Orwig, Bill Hughes, a number of us.
All people involved in careers that related to sciences and math. It's just
many
amazing.
of us, yes.
Yeah, to me that amazes me. And talking with Bill Gantz, who was a classmate of yours, he kind of rationalized it, saying that these were, because we were opening a new building, a lot of these people were fresh out of college and were young, so they were exposed to the newest in math and science and teaching techniques. And to me, I find that amazing. Obviously, you're now a Lancaster County guy living in Elizabethtown, but we still take pride that we are the top educational institution in York County, and that's something to be proud of. And that's something that's not new. That's something that I think we could argue is our heritage.
There's a strong tradition there. In my area, it's Manheim Township and Hempfield that pride themselves on being the way up, the upper crust. And anytime there's an article in the paper, and usually it's at front, that one of the school districts has started something entirely new or has done extremely well, and it's, say, Solanco, a farm community, or Garden Spot, which is much the same. I just hoot and holler and say, yeah, there is a prestige, you guys with your nose in the airs, but if you get out there, you'll find it's perhaps different than you'd think.
Yeah.
Give these people more credit.
It's kind of funny. One of the stories I like to tell, your phys ed teacher and one of your coaches, Bob McCoy, is a well-known coach in our area. Obviously, he's passed away, but a well-known coach for many years as he went from Susquehannock to York Suburban. Tell us a little bit about your playing area, and then I'll tell you my story about Bob McCoy.
Oh, playing with Bob? He was the football coach my freshman year. And to give you some idea of how things have changed in the athletic world, he had one assistant.
Okay. Well.
And of course, there were no earphones to the press box. None of that. It was Bob McCoy and Bob Thomas trying to handle a football team. And he coached football all 4 years I was here. And the last 2 years, coached basketball as well. One of my stories about Bob was he was always on me, particularly after basketball games, about how long it took me to get showered and dressed and get out of there. I was always holding Bob up So one night I rushed as much as I could, and he looked through the windows of the coach's office and saw me, and all of a sudden there he was in his top coat, headed out the door, and I said, wait a minute. All he had done was put his top coat on his gym clothes.
That's funny.
Another story about Bob, between my junior and senior year, he decided to switch to the split T rather than the regular T.
Okay.
I don't know if he had our starting quarterback Phil Izzo in mind. Phil is a friend of yours. Phil transferred to York Catholic that senior year, so Bob got stuck with me playing quarterback on a split T, and to ensure that I started on the football team and also the basketball team, I would babysit for he and Ginny for their firstborn, who was Mike, as I recall.
Mike or Jeff? I guess it is Mike is the oldest.
I think it is Mike. That's funny. I babysat to make sure I started.
I don't think you need to do that. Mr. Hedrick was the quarterback of the football team, all-star basketball player, all-star in track and field. I'm sure I'm missing something.
Not track and field.
Well, were you in track and field?
No.
Okay.
No, I gave that up early in life. In the springtime, I kept score for the baseball team and hustled women.
Well, that's nothing wrong
spring
with that.
sports, yeah.
But obviously a great athlete, but a great student also.
I couldn't make your JV teams now, Mac, with the differences in coaching and athletes.
Well, you left here. Okay, we'll use that as kind of a transition, but you left here and you also played basketball at Elizabethtown College.
They actually gave me money to play. I was a walk-on, but eventually I was getting $300. That doesn't sound like much, but it was well over 25% of the bill in those days.
Yeah, well, I would
guess. With academic scholarship, proctoring laboratories, I was what you would call a resident assistant. They actually owed me money when I left my senior year.
They really? Tell us, again, tell us a little bit about your transition, though, from Susquehannock to Elizabethtown, and maybe use this to tell your life story from Elizabethtown, where then?
The transition wasn't as great, I think, for most people because it was a small college. And academically, as I've indicated, I was prepared in a number of areas, the areas that were of interest to me. I was also fairly well prepared in English and English composition because the teacher I had as a sophomore was Gene Sheffer, who was extremely good, who made you work. Unfortunately, my uncle Claire Trout convinced her to go to Dallastown shortly thereafter, and I had Gene only for 1 year. So academically, it wasn't all that much. Athletically, boy, that was really tough because Don Smith, who was coaching then and came back and coached while you were a student, had some really powerful teams, just some really good teams. And so it took me a while to be playing varsity ball, but that was a harder adjustment. But it was a small community.
How many students did E-Town have then, out of curiosity? Do you know? 14, 1500?
My senior year would have been 600.
Wow, is that really? I didn't realize it changed that much. Now they're 2,000 or so.
1,800 too, yes.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was down that few.
You want to compare what tuition or the total cost was for you going to school and for
me? I know what it was because I just paid for my daughter to go there. But no, seriously, you think about it. You're there in the mid-50s and you say, what, $1,200?
It was less than 1,000 when I started.
Really?
The comprehensive fee, room and board, tuition, the whole bit.
Yeah. I started in 1976, room, board, like you said, comprehensive fee, $3,800. My daughter started in, what was it, 2000, 2002, 2003. I don't even know what it was. I want to say it was 27, 28,000.
Probably.
So
probably. I never looked upon it as an increase in fees. I looked upon it as the possibility of an increase in faculty salaries.
That's what I was going to say. I wonder if your salary increased like that.
Not quite. We had one son who went to E-Town. His older brother went to Western Maryland, which is now McDaniel. I prefer to call it Western McDaniel. It actually cost us more to send Bob to Elizabethtown than Joe to Western Maryland because of the 2-year lag.
Wow.
And a difference in room and board.
Yeah, just amazing. So after being a student at Elizabethtown College, take us on.
I did my graduate work at the University of Pittsburgh and then taught a year at Albright with a very good chemistry faculty, but they were mostly, with one exception, they were all 55 or so and were looking forward to staying there for 10 more years till they retired. I liked what I was doing there. I liked the students, but I really couldn't expand into the areas that were really of greater interest to me. One position came open in Elizabethtown, a fellow named John Rank and I both interviewed and applied for that position. The president at the time, in his infinite wisdom, couldn't choose between us, so he hired both of us. And John and I were colleagues until I retired in '99. He retired just this past year, after 40 plus years in the Department of Chemistry.
One of the things I know, because knowing you and seeing you as professor at Elizabethtown, where you were just first of all, you're a great professor, and that's what
Thank
you're
you. Thank you. That's said from someone who never had me in class.
Well, no, but I hung around with guys who did, and you know, they said when they would leave your class, they said it was, you know, they were hands-on, they learned things.
Yes.
It was not just sit there and be lectured to. It's not how you taught people. So you're a great teacher, a great professor, but also you coached at Elizabethtown, you were involved in the community life at Elizabethtown, and I've always felt that when you grow up in a place like Glen Rock, that had some influence on those kind of things.
I think it does, because a small community, we're all very close to each other, and it's just, you continue to do the things you knew and saw as a youth.
Yeah.
Even if I did spend most of my youth growing up hanging around the pool hall and at Bixler's in downtown Glen Rock.
Did you ever get caught by the funnel trick?
By the whom?
The funnel trick in Bixler's.
No,
we won't go into that.
Occasionally, every 4 or 5 months, the Salvation Army would come to town and set up shop at the steps of the People's Bank and come into the pool hall with their, "Won't you please give us some money?" Those are the only people that caught me.
But no, going back to the fact that you're giving something back to the community, that's truly the kind of person you are, and
it's just what you do. It's just naturally what you do.
Yeah. So you taught there, you coached at Elizabethtown.
10 years of basketball, and had some good ball players from York County, some of whom you may remember, because this would have been out of the... We hired Bob Garrett as basketball coach in '67. He was the 4th head coach I had in my first 5 years. So I was introduced to a lot of different philosophies, a lot of different offenses and defenses, and because Bob was out of Spring Grove, he had coached at Spring Grove for years, and then spent a year with Bob Halton coaching the Gettysburg Frosh. It was York County he came to recruit. And we got then, starting in 1968, John Coupraise from York Catholic. Yeah. Jeff Hunt from York Suburban, who was a year older. Jeff had gone south, I think, to Florida International, and then transferred to E-Town from there. Bobby Snyder from Eastern, whom you may have played baseball against, and someone I'm sure you know, Kevin O'Brien from Hanover. Kevin visited me 2 or 3 weeks ago, by the way. Wow. Just dropped in out of the blue one Saturday afternoon. We also had a fellow from Carlisle named Bill Richardson. We'd like to get players from Carlisle. Very good. We never got Jeff Lebo or Mike Owens, but Bill Richardson was pretty good. It was fun to have the kids from York County. And that year, the 4 of them knew each other, and it was just a wonderful year of coaching. We had a great time.
Yeah, I don't know if you knew this. We're talking a little bit about Elizabethtown College, the Blue Jay connection here. The next superintendent at Red Line School District is Frank Herron.
Hey, I know Frank. Well,
Frank's a Blue Jay.
I had Frank in class, and I knew his wife, who was Susie Newland, much better. They went off to Red Line as soon as they graduated, about 76, 78.
Yeah. Now, he worked here at Southern York County School District. He was our administrative assistant to the superintendent.
Know that.
Yeah. Well, he actually taught here first in our middle school, then became our administrative assistant here for our superintendent, Dr. Hupper, at that time, and then left here, and gosh, I'm not sure if he was a building principal. I'm pretty sure he was a building principal in Red Line, assistant superintendent, and as the superintendent retires this year, he'll be their superintendent next year.
I knew he had been at Red Line, and Frank was first baseman, as I recall.
He was, yeah.
I knew Frank and Susan quite well. Susan was a bio major.
Yeah. Great personality. I mean, he's going to do very, very well as a superintendent at Red Line. They're very fortunate to have him, and he reminds me a lot of your personality.
Ooh, I hope I wasn't a negative influence.
Well, I think you probably did have some influence, but the kind of guy who's hardworking but fun to be around, you know, and sees fun in everything he's doing, and that's kind of Frank Herron. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yep, that is exciting.
You do get me in touch and remind me of folks that I haven't thought about for a long time.
You know, let's wrap this up a little bit, but maybe the influences that growing up in Glen Rock, Susquehannock High School, we talked a little bit about it, but the value of it, and maybe, gosh, this is what I hope students today, if they're watching this, can take with them from some old guy, maybe.
It's just as tough to compare, to make a comparison now to then it would be if you wanted to talk about athletics 50 years ago. It was a different time in that it was a much more relaxed era. We discussed before we came in the whole business of people scheduling themselves such that if something goes awry by 30 seconds or 1 minute, the whole day falls apart. Right. We were much more relaxed. I think we were much closer to each other. Shrewsbury, for example, wasn't what Shrewsbury is now. You didn't worry about children because everybody's mother and father watched after everybody else's kids, in a positive sense, not the negative sense of poking their nose in where they didn't belong. And it's just something you grew up with and accepted, and that's the way life was, and you carry it on to that. I think your generation is much the same. I think it's the next generation that feels the tension and the problems. Yeah,
well, I think you're right. Any advice?
No. I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Well, the biggest inducement of getting me here was lunch. Are we going to lunch then?
We are. We're going to have a good old-fashioned...
I have till about 1 o'clock. I have an appointment in York at 1:30. But
good. I will treat you to a school lunch.
Ooh. All right.
Very good. Well, Jack, very nice to have you.
Wayne, good to see you again. And don't forget you have my scrapbook. I need to take that with me.
I do have that.
Yes.
Yep. Mr. Jack Hedrick from the class of 1955 here at Susquehannock High School. Truly just a great man who I have wonderful and great admiration for.
You know how many people are going to call me about this show and say, is this the great man?
You are a great man. And
thank you, Wayne.
I sincerely say that. I sincerely say that. So for Mr. Hare, all the students here involved in producing Alumni Pride Warrior Chat here today, I'm Wayne McCullough and Mr. Jack Hedrick saying we'll talk to you next time.